Ciao. Hi there. Thanks for tuning into the second episode of Breaking It Down with Dr. Delma Bunda. And of course, it goes without saying, thank you so much for your love and support with the first episode. I'm really glad that it got y'all thinking in a good way, but also entertaining too. I think that was the best comments I received. And my favorite was the DM conversations that we held regarding memories and how you do life with the things that you really wish you could forget. It was nice. It was like having a lovely intimate conversation where we barely knew each other, but from the first episode we bonded, so I'm really glad. Let's connect on Instagram if you haven't already. Breaking It Down with Dr. Delma Bunda. Haven't heard the first episode about how to rethink your memories. In essence, it's how not to be held captive by the past that you cannot change or do anything about, but instead realizing that you can take all the control back and choose how you remember the past. Choose to be brave and bold towards the future you desire by cognitively not dragging your messy past into your future. So go ahead and add the episode to your next to listen episodes. So let's jump in today's episode. Super amped. Even though the topic breaks my heart, so I thought, let me just break it down on air. One of the reasons for this is I've seen how too many people live completely oblivious to its consequences as well as rewards. And simply because I've been there too, and I would not exchange for that period of my life for anything besides this moment to be able to share with you the lessons that I've learned. And I hope that's all you get, the lessons and not the experience. And if you've already been in this vicious cycle, I hope by the end of this episode you will know better to do better. Gosh, before we get all up personal and intimate, let me introduce today's topic: walking and living in your season. Discovering how to embrace your seasons in life without anxiety creeping it up and making you its victim. Seasons and times, what's that all about? Seasons in the context of a life is about a period of time in our lives that is characterized by a particular condition, so to say, like heartache, joy, pain, busyness, grief. But what is definite and constant is change. But in the context of our daily living, I break it down for you, all right? So how many times have you ever felt like you've missed the boat to living your best life ever? Feeling like maybe you didn't manifest it enough or pray about it enough, or maybe you didn't fight hard enough for that lost relationship that was meant to last forever. We've all been there at some point concerning a particular area in our lives, but for some reason we don't like to talk about it so openly with those around us, or anyone for that matter, because oftentimes than not, this feeling of not measuring up or feeling like you've missed the mark to the life that we thought we were supposed to live is often followed by shame and guilt, which I guess makes sense why nobody voluntarily picks the topic to discuss it, right? I mean, seriously, I'd rather hide and feel shame, and being guilty. I mean, no one says, hi there, I'm guilty. In any case, because obviously we are well, we're all fine. My life is perfect. All in my life is in alignment to where I need it to be, right? But then when you're alone at night and you're just you and your thoughts, and you're just like, gosh, I can't wait for this season of my life to be over and I can be where I'm working towards, or trying to meditate that anxiety away. It's like a discord that exists between the reality of your everyday life versus the life that you keep trying to manifest, or your dreams that you're trying to get. But it cannot simply be meditated away. It cannot be prayed away. Sometimes you have to break it down to understand it in your context. Break down why there's this discord for you particularly, and build it up again in a way that leaves you at peace and excited to keep chasing, because chasing our dreams is what makes us really human and different from animals. Is that we can actually dream and hope to achieve them and work towards that. But I found sometimes that the chase can be so stressful and has so much anxiety linked to it, and yet we never talk about it. Like, okay, we're all going towards the same thing, have the same struggles, but why don't we ever sit and break it down together? Thank the Lord for this episode, right? But with this discord that exists in the context of your seasons, it becomes really tricky and discouraging, and sometimes sadly goes unnoticed as a source of one's anxiety and stress. You're feeling stressed, but you're doing everything you can towards the life that you desire and would like, but some reason it's just a little difficult. Not the process, but something within you is just so frustrated and so anxious and so stressed. Hey, have you ever considered that you're possibly not walking in the season that's meant for you? Let's break it down further. Let me give you a practical example of this discord in the context of seasons. So for instance, you just finished uni, finally get the job, the picture perfect spouse, and the Tesla that doesn't quite fit the graduate salary. But hey ho, who cares, right? All they'll see is the big house and the fancy car, and that I am living. Although Rich Dad and Poor Dad book would not probably agree with that, or would rather classify it as entering into a rat race. If you haven't read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I honestly recommend that you put it on your list of must reads when you desire to acquire a thriving financial mentality. In my opinion, I think this book not only just deals with finances, but I think it elaborates even more on today's topic, seasons and times, and the importance of understanding your season and your times. In the case of the book, is avoiding to live paycheck to paycheck, because when you understand what season you're in and what you're doing in that season, if it's about laying the foundation, you're not going to go overspend, but you're going to live within your means to ensure that your foundation is set for when you build the rest of the house, you've got enough, for example. But anyways, back to the illustration of your timeline. When it doesn't look like the standard picture of your peers or even your expectation. For example, you've been working on yourself the whole time, but there still remains this great part of your life that lacks a sense of joy and peace. When you look around you, it seems like everyone has got it together, most especially regarding peace and joy. They know where they are, they know what they're doing, but trust you me, half the time it's not that case. They're sitting in therapy trying to work out their ish, and we're trying to help them to break it down so they can build it up again, so do not be fooled by the outside, but instead be brave and bold enough to actually have these conversations with your friends, the ones that are close to you, even distant people. Just find out what everyone's doing with regards to, are they walking this season? What does that actually look like when you don't try to compare, but rather take notes? That's maybe a better option, making you feel a little more like you're actually towards the solution as opposed to feeling behind the whole time. Because this discord that exists, it often makes you feel like you miss this boat to happiness that everyone else is on, and indirectly making you feel this pressure to measure up, show up, and have it all together. Whilst meantime, the reality is quite the opposite. And then obviously you ghost everyone and you start saying, do you boo, I'm doing me. But it does not quite look like that when you sleep at night, or is the anxiety that creeps up. Look at your timeline. Reading and accepting your seasons and times instead of being frustrated by comparison and not being able to see what you keep manifesting into the environment or into the atmosphere. It takes time and intentionality to learn, accept, and actually walk it out. You cannot manifest what is not yours or what is not meant for you in that season to get. And those are little things that is often, I think, with this concept of manifesting is not echoed enough. We're all on a road to unfolding and growing to becoming the best version of ourselves. But yet, somehow we tend to be our own worst enemies. So do yourself a favor and do not rob yourself a season just because the others seem to be ahead of whatever area it is that you're feeling behind in. Do what is in your season to do, because when you force things to work out for you, or having to lie and manipulate circumstances and people in order to get things to work out for you and work in your favor, I think you actually doing the opposite. you're making things take longer than they should. With time, you will learn that you are actually robbing yourself of the best thing that you actually needed for the journey, because it's with time that we find out that every season that I went through was so necessary for me being here today, because everything that I learned and everything that I went through and all the people I met and the experiences that I have built up and accumulated to contribute greatly for me to enjoy the season today that I'm in, and to actually have the necessary tools, knowledge and wisdom to maximize the season, because just like the others, it too shall pass. This is how I see it. Every season, just like gaming, has its rewards and challenges. And just like some PlayStation games, when you move on to the next level without having received or discovered all that the previous level had to offer, the next level somehow is a little harder than it should be, and you could actually make it easier for yourself if you just stick it out, figure it out. Sometimes it's tricky, but it's tricky because it's just a season of trickiness, so to say. But the point is, there is a solution. The trickiness is just a season, but if you're patient enough and cognizant enough to figure out what is the season trying to tell me, to be conscious enough to ask the right questions in that moment, it doesn't last so long. But it's when you fight it, because difficult does not always signal to us that we need to quit, but sometimes it could merely a redirection or realignment of your perspective towards the same situation. Because sometimes, as you know, when we're in something too long, we stop seeing it the way it truly is, but we're so caught up in seeing our frustration of it, and that's why we talk to others about it, so that they can give us a new perspective. Same with seasons. Take a moment to breathe, realign yourself, and then keep trying. One thing that I've learned from being so aware of my seasons in life, as in what season I'm in, is when one season refuses to be a season, in essence, when it wants to make its home in my life, I get worried. Oftentimes it shows me that I've probably settled in that area and I've become really comfortable and not curious enough to grow and to strive at being the best version of myself in this particular area in life. Settling down is not wrong. The word itself is kind of like a reminder to have a balance, to know that there is a time and a season for everything under the sun. Time to chase, time to rest, time to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and time to grind, as in to put in the hours. The point there is to not miss your season because the crowd seems to be doing better. Live in the truth of your season, where the good Lord would have you be in that particular time, year and month, whatever it is. Because if we think of it like the world, for example, I live in Europe at the moment and it's winter. But in South Africa, where I'm from, it's scorching hot. But if I try to live a South African lifestyle or the summer lifestyle in the middle of my winter here, just because my South African peers or my people there are living it up in summer, I will freeze and get a cold, and the cycle just becomes vicious. The point is, I cannot go outside on my balcony and have a braai or a barbecue in the middle of minus 14 degrees. It makes no sense. I am being irrelevant to where I am in the moment right now, where I am in life. I am trying to live out someone else's season, whereas I'm in a completely different season. I know this probably seems so simple and silly, but if you look at it, oftentimes they're not. We're finding ourselves in the exact same situation. We're living summer in the middle of winter. It just doesn't go. Es geht nicht, as the Germans would say. But you know that the current partner you have is not the one for you. You just feel in your gut, this is not the one. It's just too many things between us that doesn't make sense. And the things they bring out of me, the specific characteristics, are not the things I'd like to see in a marriage context, in a forever context. But you get married anyway because I'm of that age, or my peers are getting married, and it just makes sense adjust to everyone else's season, but not yours. But if you'll be patient enough and figure out what is it that you're looking for and what season are you in, when you do that, you live amidst those that are on the same page. And the likelihood of you finding what you're looking for is way higher than when you're living in the illusion of a particular season, but the reality is quite the opposite. Okay, back to seasons. When looking at the bigger picture, you have to see that although I'm doing my best, for example, being a South African in Europe, minus 14 degrees, I'm trying my best. But because my ever intention is living summer and winter, regardless how hard I try, regardless how much effort I put in, it just won't work out. And I'll miss the beauty of winter. I'll miss the snow that comes with winter. I'll miss freezing my butt off. And because that teaches me to dress properly, silly example, but too many times in our lives we do the same. We try to put on the incorrect shoes in the season that it's not intended for. Wearing flip-flops in winter doesn't sound like a great idea. The point is, embrace your winter. If things aren't coming together for you right now, it's okay. Embrace it, own it, crawl through it, but don't give up and do not skip steps. Just because the seasons by definition are defined by a timeline, they're not everlasting, so do not give up. Hang in there, chin up, take some notes in what you're learning in this season, and stop wishing for it to pass. This is your life, and the seasons accumulate to become another year gone by and another year ahead of us. Similarly with your life, so don't skip seasons, but embrace them. Learn how to be better with every season that you're in, and take notes. Really, I totally recommend it. The second point is pay attention to who you are and what titles you carry. For example, being a mom, an engineer, a doctor, an artist, whatever you are, most of the time does not make you you. Instead, is it important to be cognitive of a distinguishing factor, because when those roles stop existing or change, which we often find ourselves, what we call a midlife crisis, which for some reason seems to be occurring a lot earlier among the millennial generation, as an earlier onset of like 25, the person is fresh out of uni, entering the working life, but already feeling like they need time out to figure out who they are and what they want. This, I believe, is another demonstration of time not used wisely during a particular season, and that is student years. Wishing so much to be in the next season where you're earning and you got your own money, or holding on too tightly to a season that has ended, leaving you at a discord and at what to say a midlife crisis, but in actual fact it's just a misalignment and a discord between the realities of the season you're in and the season that you think you should be in. And in simple terms, it's saying that I recognize that walking in my season will require some time and knowledge, but knowledge of myself. And this is not possible if I do not recognize that there's two parts of me, not just my craft that I continuously work on at work and my hard skills, but also my soft skills that actually help me navigate the everyday of life and help me navigate the situations I find myself where my talent takes me, for example. And once you recognize this, walking in your season becomes a little easier to do, because you're balancing well your work and your life, and walking in your season just becomes easier without anxiety always being a question and always creeping up, which is closing off the second point about how to walk in our seasons without anxiety, by prioritizing the roles that we play and not being stuck in role playing our whole lives that we don't even recognize who we are, because we spend so much time being everything that everyone needed in their season, and not paying attention to what my season needed from me. When you pay attention to you and when you do you well in your seasons, you indirectly give permission to others to do the same. And when everyone does that, we symbiotically benefit in the road that we're taking. That all good things comes in threes. So the third and final point is anxiety, the same thing that we're trying to avoid while confidently walking in our seasons. Well, you cannot avoid something you are not particularly familiar with or well versed in. It's like beating in the wind and hoping to change its direction. Really meaningless effort. And life is too short, and the days and the hours are far too short to be wasting our energy on something that we cannot influence its direction, or because lack of knowledge. That doesn't make sense, right? So anxiety as a general concept is our body's natural protective mechanism on overdrive, if you have to think of it in a one simple sentence. So your body instinctively always wants to protect you, right, from what is perceived as harm or threat. Both physically and emotionally, it will react to gear itself up to actually respond, either to fight or to take flight. Either way, what the body does is prioritize its level of function and distribution of resources. Now you can imagine when there is no physical threat that you can and that's what makes it really tricky when you don't fully understand it and you're trying to work through it. And that's the idea behind walking in a season without anxiety, because you live a life more conscious and aware of things around you, and you're more aware of your body. Because anxiety is like your body on overdrive without a physical object in front of it. That can be exhausting. But when you learn to walk in your seasons, somehow in the process of doing this, you actually learn where the source of your anxiety may be coming from. And of course, this is not a direct one-to-one correlation, but it's definitely something worth considering when you have an element in your life that gives you serious anxiety. I must put a disclaimer on this episode because I think I was lucky and blessed, if you can say really, to have a mother who started this process with me when I was like really young, when I barely understood what the heck she was saying. She always reminded me to walk in my truth. She believed that I had a unique path to follow, but it would only happen if I stayed true to myself. To be honest, I didn't think I understood what she meant until late in life, when everyone was doing the same thing and desiring the same things. I mean, we all go through those phases, but the only difference is every time I tried to go with the flow, oh my gosh, I looked like a fish outside of water. Complete disaster. In catastrophe. Like complete. It's so bad, I can't even articulate how bad it is. But the opposite was true, is that when I was living in my truth of who I was and what I desired in this life, it not only made life a lot easier, there wasn't a struggle like swimming against the current type of vibe, but it also gave me the sense of peace in where I was and what I was doing. And oftentimes now even I do it when I feel restless or not at ease. I take inventory on my source of decision making, because I realize that if I'm unhappy and not at ease of where I am, I need to get clarity about how did I get to where I am. So the questions that I sometimes ask myself include, did I decide whatever it is in, I don't know, relationship sector or in my social life or whatever it is? I often ask myself, did I decide based on my truth? And my truth is grossly based on my relationship and my faith and my relationship with the Heavenly Father. Because I've personally found that my faith, or what the Christian faith has offered me, and the truth of what's in the Bible has been so unwavering and constantly rewarding. So why mess with something that works, right? And secondly, for myself, I always need to ask if the desires are still my own, Or could it be a matter of what I've seen, heard elsewhere, and desired it without breaking it down for myself to see, does this actually fit into the direction that I'm going and I intend to go and the things that I want to achieve? Or is it just satisfying the lust of my eyes? Because sometimes something looks good and you start running towards it and never stop to ask, like, at what point did we decide this was necessary for us? Me, myself, and I, kind of us. And if you don't take inventory, you'll find yourself way down the road, halfway to accomplishing something that doesn't make sense to you. And for me, that results in me being restless and being unease. So to more of a practical example of my earlier decision making is I've always wanted to study medicine. Like, it just made sense to me. Although I desired law and business, I like how it looked, and I was totally in love with the idea of how it would look on me. Yeah, I know. But anyone that has watched Suits at some point, the series, or saw that has at some point or another has seen themselves as Jessica or Harvey, and I was no different. I thought, hey, I have the gift of the gab, the soft skills to pursue business school, so why not? Well, because I was too conscious of who I was and what I needed to become in this life, that my abilities and talents did not drive my decisions. Because as tough as it is to get into med school, everything else just didn't make sense to who I felt I was called to be in this life. So I made a decision, my career path, based on the truth of who I am, and not what I thought I'd probably be good at, or it's trendy, or it's cool. And I must say, a few years into it, I can honestly say I am grateful I get to do this every day. Some days are tough, some days are okay, some days it's completely quiet, but I would not see myself doing something else. It is just where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing. But it didn't come so easy, just because I knew what I wanted and who I was, it didn't mean life would respond by giving me everything, saying, yeah, see, there you go, Del, take everything, what you want. But instead, I had to learn that who I was then could not handle who I was going to become. And therefore, I need to go through necessary changes, not to change the mission, but to change me for the mission. And this became clear to me, absolutely crystal clear, when I didn't get into med school straight after high school and spending months drowning in disappointment and feeling like I missed it. I missed the boat. I missed my life. I missed my best life. I complete failure. But that was what I thought then, before I later understood the concept of seasons and times. And I didn't continue in my pity party, but because I was convicted about what I was to be in the future. At that point, I had to decide, am I going to continue in this pity party of myself and be just so disappointed in how life turned out? Or am I going to trust that the good Lord who designed my life from the beginning knows how it should be, i.e., what is meant for me will find me? And when I made this decision, I have never felt such liberation and just this readiness to live and to conquer whatever came my way. But of course, this didn't necessarily mean everything else regarding me getting into med school went smooth. No, but I started enjoying every season that I lived in. I started enjoying my process of heading towards med school, heading towards to be a doctor, and not so much being fixated on the end goal that I missed every season. And I am just so grateful I did that, because I got to enjoy all the people I met along the way. I got to enjoy all the things that I saw and the experiences that I lived. I would not redo my journey for anything else. It was tough, but because of this concept about walking in your season, every single time I felt out of balance, I'd have to remind myself I'm walking in my season. And then I find the joy and the peace in where I am and realizing I am working and walking towards the desired end, and that what is meant for me will find me. So see. And my thinking is, why waste it on a lesser version of yourself? If you could live in what is meant for you, walking in your times and seasons, it just makes sense. Why would you want anything less if you have an opportunity to have everything and more? In our human strength, we can only accomplish so much without putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, which leads to anxiety and sleepless nights and comparing ourselves to others and just never feeling like we're measuring up. But for me, the balance in walking in my season with anxiety has been my faith, believing that God, who found it necessary to create me, will order my steps in such a way that my human wisdom cannot begin to fathom, let alone actually do. And then in that space, I found peace. I don't need to compare myself. I just need to walk in my season, and it is well with my soul. And that's a wrap of the second episode, Walking in Your Season. I hope that your mind has been enlightened and your soul has totally been enlightened with regards to how you can possibly walk in your season and how it's actually beneficial to giving you peace and living in a space of peace instead of being captivated and kept captive by anxiety. And thank you again for listening to the very end. And thanks for your love and support on Instagram and Facebook. Let's connect if you haven't already. It's at Breaking It Down with Dr. Del Mabunda, both on Insta and Facebook. And remember to keep breaking things down that stand in the way of you being your best version.